It was so bad for Justin Fields in week 3. Even Taylor Swift was cheering against him. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, she was just openly rooting against. No, he was
very clever.
Obviously, he was cheering for something else. But look, Justin Fields has been bad. 99 passing yards last week. He's been under 17 fantasy points each of the last 3 games. You know, it says easy choice. This is not an easy choice.
So then why did you make this choice?
Because I'm confident that this is going to be a Justin Fields game, that he is going to come out and play well. Look, the Broncos, I'm not going on a limb here. Broncos defense is bad, and they've made 3 quarterbacks that aren't exactly, well, 2 quarterbacks aren't exactly good. One of them was Tua. Jimmy Garoppolo's best game week 1 against the Broncos. Sam Howell, who just threw 4 interceptions and sacked 9 times, best game against his defense. They're tired. They've been on the field a lot from last week's game and back-to-back road games. Justin Fields' last 5 games at home, just shy of 24 fantasy points, and I think he's going to quiet some doubters here with a matchup that's favorable for him. So I know I'm going out on a limb, and I'm you know, testing the hot streak here after 3 straight start of the weeks that have been successful, but I'm confident this is going to be a top 10 performance for Justin Fields. Not a top 5 game, not his best game of his career, but I do think that he will have a 22 to 25 point game and be a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some things that are good about Justin Fields. Number 1, designed runs last week, 7 of them. More in week 3 than in weeks 1 and 2 combined. So he's moving in the right direction, no pun intended. And you're right about the Denver defense. I mean, nobody can take that away. But this Bears offense, this is where I can't rank him as a top 12 quarterback. I can't trust the Bears offense. It's not as much Fields. I actually thought he played pretty well last week. But this offense is terrible, just awfully inefficient, bottom 5 in a ton of categories, including points scored. And this Broncos defense just got embarrassed by the Miami Dolphins. And former Chicagoan Sean Payton coming back home with that defense looking for their first win of the year. I'm nervous. I can't run and start Justin Fields as a no-doubter, but in a couple of leagues where I'm really lean at quarterback, because I did what a lot of people do. They drafted Justin Fields, didn't get a backup. I'm starting him. I think he can be top 15. Putting him in the top 10 just feels like a step too far.
All right, we'll see. We'll see how the hot streak is doing. And Justin Fields, keep it going. Give me another start of the week that comes through in a big way. Let's talk about some other starts for me, Dave, looking at a guy who's coming back for his first time this season. That's Alvin Kamara, making his season debut, suspended for the first 3 games. And some questions about, can he just be inserted right into your starting lineup, because Tampa Bay's defense has traditionally been good against the run. I'm going to start Javonte Williams in that same game. I think he's going to go off. He was actually another choice for start of the week. Anthony Richardson coming back from his concussion protocol. I struggle between Richardson and Fields, to be honest with you, who's going to be better, but I'm going to give Fields a slight nod. And then DJ Moore, I think, will play well. Surprisingly enough, he's been over 13 fantasy points each of his last 2 games. So while he's been struggling, I know he got the garbage time touchdown last week. The production has been there.
Should have had more, too. He dropped a big one.
Let's stick with Tank Dell as well, coming off 2 straight solid games. Let's talk about Alvin Kamara. So he has fresh legs against a team that played Monday night and really struggled against a running back in DeAndre Swift. He's got 4 total touchdowns in his last 5 games against Tampa Bay. So you and I are basically on the same page here. Heath, not so much. Heath Cummings, our colleague. Sportsline basically right in line with us as well. Should we be confident in Alvin Kamara?
I think we should be, because what choice do the Saints have at running back? Are they going to go to Tony Jones again and expect him to do big things, or maybe give more to Kendre Miller? I'm a little worried about them just jumping in with 2 feet with Alvin Kamara, but he's been working out and getting ready for this. They know what they have in him, and even though that offensive line isn't at full strength, I think with Derek Carr out, they need Alvin Kamara. And so I would look for him to get a minimum of 15 touches in the game. That usually means some pretty good things for him. I like him as a number 2 fantasy running back as well.
Tank Dell's been really good the last 2 weeks, and he's taken on the Steelers defense that's been miserable against opposing wide receivers. So we talked about this on Tuesday with the waiver wire option, because he was one of the guys still in the range to add, and he's been picked up understandably so because of his understandably so because of his ability.
People were wild about it too.
Yes. So I'll ask you again. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, who you like better this week?
I still have Collins ranked ahead of Dell. It's getting harder to justify, though, because Dell has more upside, because he can catch a 50-yard bomb for a touchdown against the Steelers just as easily as Nico Collins. Well, what would he need? He would probably need like 4 catches to get the same type of production. So he does have that huge upside, but usually receivers like this also have huge downside. We really haven't seen that from Tank Dell since week 1, and so fantasy managers should take a bite of him as a number 3 type of high-end wide receiver, an outstanding flex, and good in PPR as well. Remember, this is a Texans team that's throwing the football over 40 times per game. So there's going to be a lot of targets to go around. You could start them both. They could both be very good against the Steelers.
And if you read Start Sit, I say to start them both because I am confident that we'll see C.J. Stroud getting the ball out quick because the offensive line is definitely a concern once again.
But it's getting better, by the way. Laramie Tunsil working his way back. Hopefully he plays.
The run game, though, certainly suspect for the Texans. The run game's been suspect for the Broncos as well, but Javonte Williams, I think, is going to have his best game of the season. No surprise, they're taking on the Bears, which really struggled last week against the Chiefs. They allowed 4 touchdowns to the Chiefs running backs, and I think this is going to be a big game for Javonte. This is where I think we're going to see what does Sean Payton want to do? Take some pressure off of Russell Wilson, run the ball, and maybe not necessarily put his defense on the field as much as it has been, or is it going to be a Russell Wilson type of game? I think Javonte is going to, again, have his best game to date and maybe sort of quiet some doubters about him, maybe losing his job a little bit.
Could he get it done? Or what do you think? Maybe like 80 yards and a touchdown would be a really good day for him, all things
considered? Be a great day for him, looking at what he's done so far.
Considering the way that the first 3 weeks have been, I agree. He would need like 14 carries to do that. He just hasn't looked explosive. That's what makes me nervous about Javonte Williams. I can't see him as anything more than a low-end number 2 running back, but I get the matchup. I'm just worried that he's going to continue to lose playing time to Samaje Perine, who hasn't been getting a lot of touches lately, and also Jaleel McLaughlin, a good stash running back. And we're living in an era right now in fantasy where having the right stash running back matters. He could be one of the next good ones there. I don't mind him as a start this week. In previous weeks, I've said to get away from him.
Yep, I think he's going to be his best game. Like I said, number 1 running back for me. I think it's going to be a big game for the Broncos running backs. Let's talk about some starts for you, Dave, as we show you the list here. And you like Russell Wilson in that matchup against the Bears. Devon Achane, you're going to back him after his big game. Brandon Ayuk, that's an interesting one. Ayuk, I keep saying Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk, Tutu Atwell, and Adam Thielen. Let's talk about Russell Wilson here because he's had one monster game, a couple of okay games. And we know, again, this Bears defense has not exactly been great. So is this going to be a monster game for Russell Wilson or just a, I think he'll get me enough points that I'll be successful?
Not exactly great. Jamie, they have 1 sack through 3 games. They can't get the pressure on anybody. Their secondary is banged up. Their defensive coordinator is no longer with the team. This is the perfect time to start Russell Wilson, who, by the way, has played better this year. I know you said it, the stats haven't been great for him for fantasy, but his numbers, his metrics, way better than where they were a season ago, and he's attacking downfield a lot as well. So I think that there's good opportunities for him to hit some of those deep shots to Marvin Mims, to Courtland Sutton, to Jerry Jeudy, and for the Denver Broncos to go out and put up a bunch of points on their own. So he, to me, is a top 10 quarterback. I'd rather start him than Justin Fields.
If he stinks, and there's still the potential for him to stink, we may see a quarterback change coming in Denver because the fact that they
I don't disagree with that.
They left him out there down 50, and Sean Payton is not happy right now with what's happening with this offense. So he better go out and have a good game. And fantasy managers, just be careful in case he does not. Let's talk about Devon Achane in that game. Remember, his name is now being pronounced Achane. A lot of people still question that on our podcast this morning. So can he have not a 50 points.
No, I don't think he's going to get to 50. James.
But what's the realistic expectation in a tough matchup against Buffalo? They've been really good against running backs aside from one Breece Hall run. And it's still the Raheem Mostert starting job right now for him, the 31-year-old running back. So is Devon Achane going to get enough touches to be relevant enough, or is this just really the state of the position?
I like him as a number 2 running back because I think he will get just enough touches. Put him at 10 to 12, somewhere in that range. That's usually what a second running back on a Dolphins offense will do. We have seen Miami, especially when Jalen Waddle's played, ignore the run. But they haven't done that the last couple of weeks because defenses have dared them to run the ball. And they're like, cool, we're going to run it, and they run it really, really well. And you say that Buffalo's been good against the run. I think they kind of got lucky last week that Washington decided not to run that much. They were losing, Washington was. They pulled Brian Robinson. Robinson had some great runs against this Bills defense. They missed a lot of tackles. They started to show some signs of what they looked like back in week 1 against Breece Hall and the Jets. So I think there are going to be opportunities for him. Call him a floor of 70 total yards with a chance to score. That's a low-end number 2 fantasy running back.
The thing I'm really curious for both him and Mostert, last week, no Jalen Waddle. We had 11 catches from the Dolphins running backs. That's not something we typically see. Yeah. So if he's not working the passing game and does not score, could have a little bit of an empty stat line. Let's talk about Tutu Atwell because we know what's coming potentially next week, and that's Cooper Kupp if he does come back from the hamstring injury. But Atwell, actually, from a consistency standpoint, 3 great games, whereas Puka Nacua, 2 great games and then disappeared a little bit last week. So is this going to be an Atwell game, a Nacua game, or both of them against Colts?
I think it's going to be both of them, but I'm encouraged by what I've seen from Tutu Atwell this season. A minimum of 14 PPR points each of his 3 games this year. And the absolute weakness of this Colts defense is in their secondary and specifically against outside wide receivers. Atwell does that more than Nacua does. They're going to play a lot of zone. That's actually great for Nakua and makes it a little bit worse for Atwell. You'd like him to play man coverage, but he still has speed, and this is still an offense in LA that's going to throw the ball a lot, and the ball's going to have to get out quick. So I think both Rams receivers are in play as top 24 types. Nakua closer to top 12, but Atwell absolutely a start.
I got asked this question on Twitter. How can you say sit Matthew Stafford but start both wide receivers? And my reply was see weeks 1 through 3. So both receivers getting the job done.
Yeah.
Stafford not so much. Be concerned a little bit for Stafford with that offensive line concerns after what we saw against the Bengals on Monday night.